Sam.
Hello, Alasdair. How you doing?
Hello, I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Well, I'm tired, if I'm honest. It's been one of
it's
those.
usually me.
It's usually you. It's fine. I'm peppy. It's just been one of those days I've been running around, doing lots of things, but I'm very excited because we're doing a new kind of rewatch, and I did watch all of this. Like, normally I watch it like a few days before and kind of like soak it up and think about it. Honey, I finished this about an hour ago. This is fresh in my memory.
Oh my god, this is fresh in your brain.
Oh, how are you? How are you?
I'm great. I'm really well. Yeah, I think it's just the season to be tired. It's March. It's just not it, is it?
I know.
It's really a bleak reality and this little like limp toward. Are we in spring yet? I don't even know.
It spring's like the 20-something. I think it's in the next like 10 days. I'm not sure.
Winter is brutal, to be honest with you.
Winter
I'm
is.
on just like a disgusting amount of sugar today. Like the amount of sugar I've consumed honestly throughout the day is
Really?
it's childish in quantities.
Wait, what are you eating? What are your sugar highs?
Everything. Like I mean, honestly, everything from like cereal through to like about 5 minutes ago, I was having an M&S white chocolate cookie.
I love that.
Like from the minute I wake up, I am like lacing everything with sugar, and I'm like, that's so. Why do I have cavities? That's not right.
See, I feel
that
like
can't be right.
I'm such a sweet person, but only really in the evenings. I don't normally nibble sweet stuff throughout the day. I don't
my God, I'm
find.
horrific.
But then in the evening, like I was just having. Would you like a jelly baby? I was just having jelly babies a minute ago.
I love sweets. I really love sweets. Anyway, we're getting way off. I love sweets though.
Did they ever do like a Doctor Who themed? I remember they did Doctor Who themed like SpaghettiOs, like like alphabety spaghetti. They did Doctor Who, and they did Doctor Who Froobs.
Oh yeah, no, the Froobs I remember. Nah, I don't remember No sweets I know of. I remember there was a lot of Scooby Doo stuff I used to like. There was Scooby snacks at some point.
We were
in time.
literally, me and my boyfriend, talking about this yesterday. The little jelly Scooby snacks.
Yeah, something like that. Or there was something. They did a Scooby snack version of what were they called? Like Dairy Lunchables. They did like a Scooby snack version of that as well.
I feel like I remember that. I feel like more so in like the mid-noughties, there was such a huge push for like branded food items where like you could get like an orange juice with Avatar on the side or something. Well, I mean, they just did that with all the cereal boxes for the new one. But yeah, no, I definitely have memories of that one.
Do you remember the ham that looked like a bear? I guess they banned that now.
Billy Bear, and yes, I do, because it was one of the only things I ate as a kid.
That is so consistent with what I imagine you would have eaten as a child.
When I went to school, I was given jam sandwiches or Billy Bear, and everyone would be like, "Oh, is it a ham sandwich?" And I'd be like, "No, it's a Billy Bear.
No, it's a Billy sandwich."
It's my Billy Bear. Oh,
All right. Well, we haven't introduced ourselves. Let's get into that as well. I'm Alasdair.
I'm Sam.
And you're listening to Wholala,
Doctor Who podcast, where we look at all things Whoniverse, past this episode, present and future.
Ooh. So obviously we started Wholala in the fairly distant past now of 2005. Then we took a hop forward to 2013. Now we're going back again in the TARDIS to the year 1970. January 1970, where we're watching Spearhead from space. It was shown in 4 parts from the 3rd to the 24th of January 1970, and this is considered one of the greats of Doctor Who, and I was so excited to jump in here.
It really, really is. We've been saying the whole time we've been doing this podcast, we want to kind of dive into classic Who, and I think this is a perfect jumping in point. I feel like this was a little bit of like a reboot for the show. Like it was the first episode in colour, obviously a new Doctor. We talk a lot about jumping in points in New Who. Maybe 2005 would be one. I'd say 2010 is one. Jodie's Era is probably one. And I definitely think this was probably, if not with the second Doctor, this is probably the first big sort of soft reboot of the show, I'd say.
Yeah, it's got a clean break point. It definitely kind of is an easy place to jump in. I was really keen to watch a Jon Pertwee story because, as I'd said to you before, I don't know what it is, but whenever I've seen clips of him, either as the Doctor or behind the scenes, something is so magnetic to me about Jon Pertwee the person and the third Doctor. And I wasn't disappointed because it was a few months ago that I had either the BritBox or the ITV. I think the ITV subscription is what I had this year. And I jumped in, watched this one. I was texting you throughout and I was like, Sam, like, this is camp. Like,
this is gold.
This is really good. And surprise as well, in some ways how little has changed over time and how like true New Who is to its roots. I think as someone who really hadn't watched full serials before.
Well, this is the thing. I feel like you and me very much come to this from the perspective of people who were really engaged with New Who. We obviously started watching in 2005, and I think maybe slightly more than you, I like dipped my toe in and out of different serials. There's definitely like certain Doctors I love and certain serials I love, but I by no means was like expanding the entirety of Classic Me, because obviously when we were kids, we just couldn't get them. The only way you could get them was if you had the DVDs. So there are a few DVDs I had, and my only true impression of Pertwee when I was a kid was in the Five Doctors. And that's another one we have to look back on. Wasn't that one of your first classic ones that you watched, The Five Doctors?
It's one of my first recent ones I watched. I don't think I'd really watched any stories apart from that all the way through, kind of multi-part stories. I'd only ever seen kind of bits that, like I've said before, my uncle has a massive collection of classic Who stories.
Yeah.
And so sometimes me and my sister would be over, and, you know, back when we were a lot younger, he'd kind of put on an episode for us, and we'd see like a bit of a Doctor Who episode, but we were kind of like enjoying it from the perspective of laughing at the silly effects. Or, you know, he's a very funny guy, so like, you know, he just has like a very witty sense of humor, and so he could like point out the stuff that was funny about it for us when we were younger, and it was just so funny. So it sounds really bad, but I think until recently I just didn't take classic Who very seriously because that was my impression of it growing up. But actually watching this, it's a whole lot more, Sam. It's a whole lot more.
It's a whole lot more, and I'm really glad you suggested this one to start with, because you kind of get a taste for it in the Five Doctors, if that sort of was your jumping in point like me. But the Third Doctor, he's so chauvinistic and self-righteous, but in like a really fun way, like a really funny way. Like, I mean, William Hartnell was very self-righteous in a completely different way. I feel less so the Second Doctor maybe, but we'll dive into it, but he just says and does certain things in this episode. I think part of that is because he's like post-regeneration and his brain's a bit muddled, but as the episode goes on, he just does some really random things, and it's so funny. It's really, really good.
It's funny because if you think of Patrick Troughton as being the inspiration perhaps for the 11th Doctor, maybe more than any other single Doctor, it really feels that Jon Pertwee is the template for the 12th Doctor, but maybe just with like a little more of a flourish. I think later on when the 12th Doctor kind of lightens up a bit, and we have the 12th Doctor kind of towards the end of their run, not the initial 12th Doctor we get in Series 8, who's very
much more like Hartnell
and introspective. Yeah, I feel like that's the closest Doctor I can think of, but I love Jon Pertwee's Doctor. I really do.
I love it.
And also a good tie in here that the collection Blu-ray edition of season 9, which is 2 seasons after the one that we're discussing today, has just come out this week, and there is this absolutely astonishing edit that's been done for the trailer for that, where it's this brilliant kind of proper retro 70s spy thriller Bond
very
style
like James
trailer.
Bond, the Avengers,
oh my God,
the 60s Avengers. And
people say it just nails the feeling for Jon Pertwee's era, really, of him as kind of the Bond Doctor. And I adore it. I really do. So let's get into it.
Yeah, let's dive in.
The director for this episode is Derek Martinus. This is actually his final serial for Doctor Who. He directed 26 episodes for the series, featuring the first 3 Doctors, including William Hartnell's regeneration into Patrick Troughton. The writer for this one is a massive Doctor Who legend, Robert Holmes. He was the author of more scripts for the 20th century incarnation of the programme than any other writer, 64 episodes in total, and he created or reimagined many key elements of the programme's mythology. So I'm going to get into that a little bit later on, but I think you'll be amazed how many characters and concepts debuted in episodes that he wrote. It got somewhere between 8.1, 8.4 million viewers throughout the serials.
That feels like really good for the time. I know obviously there was only like at the moment viewings, but I think that feels really good. I think Day of the Doctor got something like 10 million.
I mean, how many people could have been alive in 1970? 12? Like, there was no population then, right? So you got to scale it back. You've got to allow inflation. IMDb 8.1. I'm not really sure IMDb means anything here because we're now into Classic Who, but look, this is considered one of the greats, no doubt.
For sure. I mean, it really was. I feel like with the structure of Classic Who, for me, at times, not all the time, possibly in this episode, I feel like the format of having one serial with, say, 4 episodes doesn't always work. Much as I do love this episode, I feel like it could have maybe been like a 2-parter, but it felt like there were certain bits that were like a little dragged on for me, whereas other episodes, like for example Genesis of the Daleks or the 5 Doctors, those really suit that length of episode. I feel like those feel more like they have enough program to fill, say, a movie length, like a 2-hour movie. So I feel like maybe this episode suffered, for me, in my opinion, from a little bit of like slow pacing, but overall great story.
Interesting. So funny, once again we find ourselves in a time where Doctor Who is kind of once again facing extinction. I didn't realize this, but I think there was almost a cancellation here, and then there was, you know, a number of factors that I'm not fully clued up on that mean that they didn't go ahead with cancelling Who and they decided to carry on going. But there were a lot of changes that happened at this time. So massive changes, including that this is the first time the show was ever broadcast in colour. We had an improved budget, which meant they could do more location filming, more action sequences than they'd ever done before. We have Barry Letts now producing. You probably heard his name before. He produced a lot of Doctor Who, and he was really embracing a lot of the new technologies that were possible for TV, so moving the show into colour. He also was massively enthusiastic about colour separation overlay. That's basically just green screen, chroma keying stuff, but done in a way that isn't too much. I watched a few kind of mega Classic Who enthusiasts, and they're satisfied with the amount of green screen. They think it's not too jarring.
Have you ever seen the clip of the dinosaurs in Pertwee Zero?
Is that from the next one, from the Silurian story?
He has that like hovercraft, the Who-mobile or something.
Okay, not this one then.
And there's a shot where he looks up and there's a huge dinosaur on top of him that is very clearly like a toy T-Rex.
Yes, and that does come up. That does come up. Yeah. So
that's funny.
Now, to move on to Robert Holmes, he's the one who wrote this story. He introduced a staggering number of concepts that are still kind of massively part of the show now. Major characters or concepts that he either created or that were debuted in one of his scripts include the Third Doctor, Liz Shaw, the Nestene Consciousness, the Autons, Time Lords having 2 hearts, the Master, Joe Grant, Sarah Jane Smith, Gallifrey, which had previously been seen but not named, the Sontarans, the 12 regeneration and 13 incarnation limit for the Time Lords, the Matrix, Rassilon, the Eye of Harmony, the Shobogans, Romana the First, and the Valeyard. So that's a handful.
That is a lot of heavy
That's
Who
a lot
stuff.
of heavy Who lore. He is truly what a Who master. This episode is interesting as well because it's kind of accidentally in HD. The Blu-ray looks amazing, or if you look on YouTube, there's great 2K upscaled clips from this one as well. It's like they shot a really low-budget Doctor Who movie, which essentially they did, because the sets look really sturdy, they look really colourful, much better than the usual kind of overlit studio camera work. And the reason for this is that there was a strike at the time, which meant that all the BBC studio cameramen were on strike during all the location filming. And they were demanding more money because they were operating more technically challenging electronic color cameras. And they basically made the decision that they were just going to go ahead and film the whole thing on 16mm film because the film cameramen were part of a different union, so they weren't on strike. So accidentally...
They just got who they could
get.
Yeah,
so it's just a one-off story, which is in film, which is really funny because it essentially means that it is inherently, naturally in HD, as kind of all film movies are. And so looks really great when upscaled and put into HD. So it was actually the first classic Doctor Who serial ever put in HD in 2013.
That's so funny that the problem at the time was that the crew they normally have on strikes had to sort of like find a creative solution, and in doing that accidentally made something that in later years would be like incredible quality.
And I think someone who worked on it at the time, I can't remember who it was, said that basically at the time they had a bit of a dream. They're like, oh, can you imagine if we could do them all in film, we could sell this to America? And that was apparently just such a ridiculous fantasy. And here we are now, distributing it with Disney Plus.
The dream is real.
The dream is real.
I don't know if it was the film camera or the real 70s feel, but the whole time I was watching this, I really felt like I was watching. Have you seen the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie?
Yes.
The Gene Wilder one. It felt very like that, like especially in the scenes where the unit soldiers were talking, where the reporters were talking, I think in the first part. It felt very like all the reporters like, we're looking for the golden ticket. Charlie boy, you've got it. Run, Charlie, run home. Like that. I was watching it and I was like, this literally feels like it could have been the same director.
That is exactly the aesthetic. That is so funny. I would love to understand exactly what it is that makes something feel that 70s, but it really is that.
I know. I think it's a mix of the radio posh voice. Everyone sounds like they're doing the radio phone for a horse race. Yeah, it's the classically
trained voices for sure.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people listening are just not going to be familiar with the story, so we're giving a slightly more comprehensive episode summary than normal. If you want to go back and look at it, it's unfortunately trickier than it really should be. It's only available on ITVX or DVD, which is really frustrating. I'm sure in future it's either going to return to iPlayer or it's going to end up on Disney+, but for the time being, it is basically behind a paywall, so enjoy this audio version.
But you can, however, get a free 1-week trial, which is what I did to watch this, if you sign up to ITVX. Just remember to cancel before the week's up.
That's true. Remember to do that. This is not an ad. It's the opposite, in fact.
This is the opposite. You don't like ITVX as a platform.
Sam, give us a summary of this episode.
Forbidden to continue travelling in the universe by the Time Lords, the Doctor has been exiled to Earth in 1973 for some reason. In the woods, the Doctor collapses outside his TARDIS and is taken to a hospital where his unusual anatomy of two hearts confuses the Doctors. Meanwhile, a shower of meteorites is detected by UNIT, the United Nations Intelligence Task Force, and they land in Kent, of all places. Back at Unit HQ, the Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart is trying to recruit Dr. Liz Shaw as a scientific advisor. Liz is sceptical of UNIT and the Brigadier and is annoyed to be taken away from her research at Cambridge.
The plastic object is a power unit for an alien intelligence called the Nestene Consciousness. The Nestene has a fondness for plastic and can animate human replicas made from it, called autons. The Nestene have taken over a toy factory and plan to replace key government and public figures with auton duplicates.
After recovering in the hospital and evading the Auton's abduction, the Doctor discovers that the Time Lords have disabled his TARDIS, trapping him on Earth. Despite his recent change in appearance, he convinces Lethbridge Stewart that he is the same man who he helped defeat the Yeti and the Cybermen. With Liz's help, he uncovers the Nestene plot, and just as the Autons start attacking across Britain, the Doctor creates an electroshock device that he believes will disable them. UNIT attacks the plastic factory, but the Autons are immune to the gunfire. The Doctor and Liz enter the factory and face a tentacle plastic host created by the Nestenes as the perfect invasion form. While the Doctor fights the creature, Liz uses the electroshock device to shut the creature down, causing all the other Autons to deactivate as well.
The Brigadier fears that the Nestenes will one day return and asks the Doctor for help. The Doctor agrees he will join UNIT, but only if he gets facilities to repair the TARDIS and a sporty car. Liz also agrees to stay on as his assistant, apparently not getting the role of scientific advisor.
God bless. She probably could do better in Cambridge.
She was interviewed as scientific advisor. The Doctor turns up, and then she's like, all right, I'll be the assistant. Like,
he's like, and I'll need the assistance of Miss Liz. Miss Shaw.
Yes. Everyday sexism, truly.
Oh my goodness. Well, speaking of, I mean, we'll dive into the episode, but one thing that I've got on my notes, because I was kind of like frantically making notes throughout the episode, is all of the women are just wearing short skirts. All of the nurses, Liz Shaw, everyone, no matter what their role or uniform, if you are a woman, you are wearing a skirt above the knee.
Yes, they're short. Liz Shaw's outfit, I mean, look, listen, they look great, by the way. I think she looks fantastic. But yeah, I did notice it's all leg for the scientific advisor at UNIT.
Yeah, no, exactly.
The Brigadier is in like a full beige suit with like not an inch of skin out. And then he's got like Liz following him around, like full leg out. She looks great though. She looks great.
So, Alistair, what did you think about this episode overall?
Well, I loved it. The first reaction I had, I mean, the standout scene for me, as you know, is the Doctor's wheelchair escape. So there's a scene where the Doctor is being bundled into the back of an ambulance, abducted. He's in a straitjacket. He's got tape on his mouth. And he's pretending to be unconscious. And then he kind of wakes up, breaks out, and kind of rolls down the hill to escape at the end of the first episode in a wheelchair.
I can just hear like the Benny Hill theme over the like.
It's the most Benny Hill thing I've ever seen, which is also funny because pre this, Jon Pertwee was previously a comedy actor, so maybe it just comes off. It's funny than it's meant to be. But oh my god, I sent you that clip and I played "I Am the Doctor" over the top of that.
Oh my god.
And it's just so far from what it ends up being in Doctor Who. It's funny, I wonder if that was like a bit of an homage to it they did. You know, later on there's a scene with David Tennant strapped up in his final episode. Don't know if that's
Maybe,
the end of time.
in the end of time. It could be like a little homage to it.
But yeah, he's kind of strapped up in the same way, and it's again quite a funny scene.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I think this episode does really well is and again, I think they do this in New Who as well, is they make a soft reboot, like a new launching in point for the show, but they do reintroduce existing characters, existing plots, and they're not afraid to reference things that have happened. So I love that we see the Brigadier again, and he does inadvertently reference, like, you know, oh, we had help from the Doctor, he helped us with previous invasions, and they were obviously the Cybermen and the Yeti, but it's not important to this plot. As a new viewer, you don't need to know that, but as someone who's watched the show, you kind of get payoff for that little reference. And I feel like little things like that make this such an interesting jumping in point for me, for someone who's a lot more familiar with New Who, going back and watching this, because I'm like, oh no, I know what he's talking about there, so I get a little sort of kick out of that. But it didn't inhibit my boyfriend, who doesn't really watch Doctor Who at all. He actually watched the majority of this with me, and he completely understood. Yeah, he got it. He completely understood the plot, saw where it was going. So I thought that was great. And as you said, the inclusion of Liz Shaw, she is. I feel a bit sad because she's not one of the companions that people talk about a lot. I feel like people talk a lot about like Sarah Jane and Joe Grant and like Barbara and Ian, but she is an amazing companion. She's amazing.
Yeah. I totally agree. I was shocked watching this that I'd never really heard of Liz Shaw, because one of my impressions from this was like, wow, I really like Liz. And I think the reason you probably haven't heard of her is because I don't think Liz ever takes a trip in the TARDIS. And so I don't know if because of that, she's not considered kind of a full companion. Which is really sad, because the whole series is Earthbound. So, I mean, Liz is a companion in that sense, you know, and would have joined the Doctor on kind of off-world adventures if that had been an option. And I think that was all a behind-the-scenes decision as well, to make it Earthbound so that it could feel like a bit more of a grounded and serious show, and so that I think they could do a bit more with the budget, because I think creating planets and corridors and spaceships is just so expensive.
Yeah, I definitely think it was the right decision for the time. Like you said, coming off of a potential cancellation, because like William Hartnell's era was always either going to like old historical places that they would have to create all of these amazing sets, or going off world to all these planets. And they went to a lot of planets in like the William Hartnell years, and the same, I guess, for Patrick Troughton as well. But I think it was an interesting and clever choice to make the Doctor Earthbound for his first series, because it then puts the Doctor in a situation he's not been in before. This version of the Doctor's had his memories taken away, so he is sort of like clasping at memories and knowledge that he can get from the back of his brain, but he is really sort of like set in this situation, and we're watching him deal with that. Like, there's that funny scene where he manages to trick Liz into giving him the TARDIS key so he can try and escape, but the TARDIS is Earthbound, it's not working properly, and we sort of have to see him deal with those consequences, as well as just the financial benefit of, you know, you're shooting an Earth. In episode 4, when all the Autons are coming out and attacking, I was recently working at Ealing Studios, which is in Ealing Broadway, and that was all shot on the Broadway, and I was looking at it and I was just like, oh my god, like this is down the road from where I used to work. And I can see, I'm like, that was the Prayer, and the actual shop where they're all breaking out of the glass and coming out of is now an M&S that I've been to loads. And I was like, oh my god, it's the Broadway, that's the Prayer, that's the M&S. So I think that it was just smart, you know, from a business financial standpoint, but also an interesting way to create a new story within those parameters, rather than just trying to make cheap sets.
Two things. One, the moment where he realizes he can't take off. There's some great sound design with this like stuttering TARDIS, but second of all, there's really great comedy when he kind of has to like stumble back out and he's like, yes, I'm sorry everyone, I was actually trying to escape just now, and it looks like I can't, so I'm still here. The other thing I wanted to say is we really need to talk about that scene with the Autons coming down the high street, because that's horror. I mean, that's horror. I mean, obviously it's Doctor Who and it was 1970 on TV, and there was no blood, no gore. If you added a little, it's a full horror. It's really, really scary.
We'll just replace that orange sort of smoke that happens when the Autons shoot you with blood, and that's
it's
full-out horror.
It's horrible. I mean, it's horror anyway. I mean, that would have freaked me right out as a kid. It freaks me out now. So if you're listening and you're not familiar, do go and have a look at that scene. It is on YouTube. It's really horrible. The masks are properly creepy as well. The Autons look terrifying.
I know. I feel like I think they should have done it earlier in the serial, material, because that all happens within 10 minutes of the ending of the final part of this story. And we've seen the Autons a lot by that point. And don't get me wrong, I actually really, really love the sort of quote unquote classic Auton where they have that blue sort of army suit on, but I think that they do look like shop window dummies, which they then play into later when they break out of the shops. I think it would have been a fun reveal to have that earlier, maybe, so that the audience seeing them for the first time, because obviously you and I are seeing this from the perspective of already seeing the Autons in 2005, to have the reveal of, oh my goodness, these are shop window dummies and they are moving, oh my god, they're alive. That might have been played better earlier. I don't know. But you're completely right that it was an amazing scene of horror, and it went on for like surprisingly long, and the screams of everyone when they're running away and being killed, it was so good.
Yeah. Something weird in this episode, I guess I'm doing a low right now. I think we'll be doing highs and lows without saying we're doing highs and lows. A potential low is everyone's really sweaty in this episode. I mean, part of that's deliberate in that some people are meant to be like plastic Autons or under the influence of Autons and they're meant to be sweaty. But this episode opens with someone dripping with sweat.
I remember that was exactly what I thought. I guess it's the studio lights.
It's not clear why he's sweating. I don't know if that was like part of the story that he's sweating, but he's dripping. And there's other points in this as well where people are really sweaty.
I thought when I first turned it on, it's literally the first shot, and he's tracking something flying into through space, and I was like, oh, I guess he's doing something really like high stakes, and life or death, and he's really terrified. But it starts with him like noticing that something's coming in. He's already really sweaty. So I do think it was just the studio lights were very intense in certain scenes, because they do that plasticky makeup really well with the people who are Nestenes, but look like real people. Like they just have like a thick layer of foundation. That was done really well. And did you notice then, thinking forward to 2005, that's what they did with Mickey when there was the Mickey duplicate. They gave him the same kind of plasticky sheen, which I thought was a really fun nod to this serial. And I'm really excited to watch Terror of the Autons and other Auton stories are coming off the back of this. But I thought that was a really good way to distinctly but subtly as well show, okay, these people are Nestenes or Autons. But yeah, also other people were sweating as well.
Yes. Another high for me is the music in this one. So obviously worlds apart from the modern soundtracks that we're used to, nothing like a Murray Gold bombastic orchestra soundtrack. Yeah. We do get some of the kind of classic Who kind of distinctive synth sounds that we're used to, some of those electronic noises, which are again great for, I think, building tension, very creepy sounds that we really only get in this era. But we have some other parts with really interesting music as well. Like there's a scene where Liz Shaw at the beginning is being driven into the unit base in a limousine, and there's this like soft jazz playing, and I'm like, okay,
I'm feeling this.
And it goes on for like a good minute, and I was like, all right, this is new. Yeah, that's my thought on that.
Yeah, no, I really like it too. I think that they have a good balance of actual score, like playing jazz and stuff, but then also like weird like little like synthy interlude bits at certain scenes. That was really done really well. One thing that I love about this episode, and I think it's true with all the characters, but just so in particular, Jon Pertwee and his performance as the Doctor. I think this was such a strong first performance as the Doctor, and I'm sure throughout his era, like we were saying with Matt Smith, you grow into the role and you develop it and you refine it and you change it, but it was such a strong first episode, and him like, shoes.
Oh my god!
When he first wakes
shoes.
up and he wants his shoes because it's got the TARDIS key in.
Yes.
He's just like, shoes. It was, and there's this bit where when he breaks out of the hospital and he goes in disguise or changes his clothes, he's driving past a unit guard and he's like, I suppose you'll want to see my papers. Well, I don't have any. And I'm not going to tell you my name either. What are you arguing with me for? And he's like not letting the guy say a single word. And he's like, what are you arguing with me for, man? Just let me go tell Brigadier Stewart that I am on my way.
I love.
Amazing.
That's quite a good impression, It's funny. I saw someone else do a video about this, and they said what's interesting is that's not just of Jon Pertwee's era, but ever in Doctor Who. It's arguably the first I am the Doctor moment, where through sheer strength of personality, the Doctor is just like, I'm here, and I'm just gonna confuse you with my personality in a way that will somehow give me access. Yeah, I agree. He's so wonderful, and there's so many little like parts of his performance I like. I really find it hard to even really describe what it is, but in a nutshell, I just find it, charming. Charming and camp are really the two things. There's just something about it. It really like
It's
I'm so endeared by it. Like, I just need more of it.
No, me too. Me too. The clothes he chooses to steal, like the frills and the differently lined coat, and then at the end he's like, "Well, I don't have anything. All I have is this coat. Oh no, I don't even have these clothes. I borrowed them." Like, he's just like, and the way that he'll like look in the mirror and change his hat and be like, "No, no, no, that hat doesn't suit this," and choose a different hat. Oh, it's so funny.
It's the comedy, isn't it? It's the comedy that's good. I think, a really great Doctor has got some really great comedy, and that really got nailed. It's funny as well because I guess, like, how does this compare to what went before it? Because it's nothing like William Hartnell. That I can, or is it? I don't know. I haven't watched very much William Hartnell, and I think actually maybe that's not fair because
I think it's worlds apart from William Hartnell.
I've been led to believe though that William Hartnell's Doctor was a very grumpy Doctor, almost based on the kind of version that we got in the modern era and Twice Upon a Time, and also I guess some of the short clips I'd seen. But then since that time, I've seen more of his performance, and actually there are points where the first Doctor, is quite whimsical and quite silly and
giggly.
Dare I say, goofy?
Could be.
He can be a goofy Doctor.
Like we were saying again with Matt Smith, he changed his performance and developed it as it went on. But I definitely think, the structure he started out with was like the elderly grandfather. Whereas this Doctor, I feel like I think fun is a word that comes to mind. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He's playful. I love how much he's so self-obsessed. Like he thinks he's the smartest person in the room, or he knows he is. He thinks he's like the most dashing person in the room when he's looking at his face and he's like, "Oh, this is quite expressive." Like, it's so funny. Yeah, because I guess as well, right before him, Patrick Troughton's Doctor, the second Doctor, is quite childish. Feels like there's a little childish innocence to him. There's a bit of a flappiness to him that I think is like then kept by the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith. And this again feels like you said, really. I think he's a little more together. He's quite sharp, this Doctor. He's got like a wittiness to him he's quick. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
he really feels like
quick.
He's very alert to what's happening. And I know. I just keep thinking of certain lines. His delivery is just consistently funny to me. I'm just thinking that that's not even in this episode, but in season 9, just, what do you think this is? There's a picnic. Just that line, it just sends me.
And it's in that trailer where he's like, "Have you tried the cheese? It's quite good."
Why is it so funny? I don't know. I think the whole thing reads as a massive Victoria Woods bit to me. And
it is giving that, yeah. Let's do it.
Obviously, all of that takes the piss of kind of like the whole like classically trained actors doing comedy thing. And something about classically trained actors in Old Who is just funny. Like it just is inherently camp. Like the way they bloody speak is so funny.
Well, it's all throughout this episode. Every single unit soldier, including Lethbridge Stewart, they all talk like this. We have to go to the we gotta go.
Cool, speak like this, sir. Yeah.
One thing that this episode, I guess I was gonna say it's low, but I really enjoyed it. But I think for the wrong reasons. Is some of the character dialogue is just really odd. Like the farmer, like a poacher, when he's showing his wife that he hasn't stolen anything and he's trying to distract her, he's like, "I'm hungry, woman, go make me some dinner." And she's like, "Oh my, like, you don't talk to me like that." Or when that unit soldier shoots the Doctor and the Doctor kind of falls down, and he's like, "Who told you to fire, you stupid?" And then it's like,
"You
cut
stupid,"
to the
and he gets cut off. Oh my god. It's like they could only afford the one take and the line was not delivered well. Oh my god. So the cliffhanger, right, for anyone who's not seen this, okay, of episode 1, is the Doctor has just escaped this ambulance, as I said. He rolls down the hill in a wheelchair. He rolls all the way into the woods. He's then stumbling through the bushes, which alarms some unit soldiers nearby who are guarding the area. They then shoot him. And their reaction is just, "Who told you to shoot, you stupid?" And then it cuts. That's the end of the episode, and it's a cliffhanger.
Well, that's...
Oh my god.
It's amazing, so and that's another thing that I noticed about this sort of era of Doctor Who is like in New Who, when you're getting towards the end of an episode in like a 2-parter or something, it will like the music will swell and it will build up and you'll feel the drama coming there, and like it will build up to this like dun, 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 moment before the credits. Whereas in this, there is drama, like in the cliffhanger for episode 3, someone's about to be shot by an auton. Obviously, the Doctor was just shot. It's not that there aren't cliffhangers, but they are just met by dialogue and then the end credits. And it's quite a jarring jump when you're watching and you're like, oh, that's the end, okay. Like,
there are some other really funny bits I've seen from Classic Who around this time as well. There's one where it cuts so abruptly. It's like Liz Shaw being chased across a bridge. I don't know if you've seen this clip. She's being chased across the bridge by some bad guys. She has a little bit of like a scrap with them, and one falls in, and then she flips over the railing as she's about to drop in as well. And I think she like it's the way it's cut is really jarring. Like she like does a flip over the side, and almost like mid flip it cuts to the credits, and it's so sudden. You're like, oh, it's the end, and you're not expecting it, and it doesn't even feel like a cliffhanger. You're like, oh, very strange.
There she goes. One thing that I really, really loved about this, and I think it might be another reason why I felt a bit like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, is as soon as they realised that the Nestenes or the Autons are linked to plastic, we have like a minute montage of the plastic factory of them just making dolls, going from like pouring the moulds and putting them out and putting eyes and sewing hair and stuff into them. And it felt very like the opening credits of Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, where you see them making the Wonka bars. And I think that was really good because the entire plot for the rest of this stems from this plastics factory. The Autons have infiltrated this factory. They're using the factory to make more like Auton dummies and shipping them out. And I think that having a sort of soft introduction as to where we are for the audience, but it's also a little bit creepy. Like watching these bald-headed dolls get made, it's kind of creepy as well.
It was creepy.
And I think that is a really, really good way to introduce this plot element, because the fact they're plastic and the fact that it's set in a plastic factory are probably the two most important plot points you need to know. And you really establish where you are, because most of the episodes we are in offices. We're either in unit or in offices in the plastics factory. And I think this was a really, really great way to distinguish where we are and that it's going to be important going on. I think that was really, really good.
It's quite an artsy little setup, no dialogue.
Definitely.
I don't think did it have music? I feel like I remember it's silent.
I think it does have music, but it's very soft music. You can also hear the Foley of like the machines like chugging, and like possibly, if I remember correctly, like there's the people who are sewing the dolls. You might hear them talking. Like there's a lot of Foley. I think there might be.
It builds
music.
a nice uneasiness.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. It builds a nice uneasiness. But I think that things like that, I don't think you can always afford the time in like current Doctor Who, like with 45-minute episodes. Things like that, I don't think you can always like allow yourself the time to have in modern Who. Like if an episode's say 45 minutes or an hour, that 1 minute of time could probably be better spent somewhere else. But when you've got like 4 20-minute serials, you can allow yourself a little bit of time to play with that and make choices like that. And I think that was a really fun choice to include.
Yeah. I think, those baby dolls as one that are being made, they haven't got their eyes yet. Like they are like just the heads, and they've just got like hollow necks and hollow eyes, and they look really horrid. And that builds so nicely up to that like horrible uncanny valley of the plastic doubles. There's no jump scares. They're not like grotesque aliens with like, they're not like, not the Zygons. They're not
not the Zygons.
It's just like the disturbing chillingness of like it's nearly human, but it's just that slight unease they build it's so good.
I really want to make the next classic episode we watch be the introduction of the Zygons with the Fourth Doctor.
Oh yeah. I
really want to do that to you.
Yeah, sure.
Anyways,
one thing I really love is the like unnecessary shower the Doctor takes, kind of post regeneration. Like not only does he like steal a full costume, he decides to like take a shower in the Doctor's room. And what's also funny as well is he's tattooed for this. Like he's got his actual tattoo. He's got like a snake tattoo on his forearm. Some people have gone on actually to theorize that there's like it's not a continuity thing, that actually like Time Lords are naturally like branded somewhere on their body when they regenerate, which is quite funny.
Yeah.
Shooty's costume's actually going to have Gallifreyan nail tattoos, so perhaps not too far off.
Maybe. I've heard similar things. I've heard people think that it might be a Time Lord criminal tattoo, because obviously he was on trial in the last episode and then forced into exile. So because he was like forced to regenerate, some people have like speculated that it's the Time Lords like branded him as a criminal.
Nice. I love the like in general the whole like post regeneration hijinks of just like being a bit scatty and a bit silly and almost like a bit drunk on regeneration energy. I just always enjoy that performance.
Me too.
He's so good at it. It fits like his comedy background so well. The whole like demonstrating like how flexible his new face is so good. And I think on that thread, another big high is that even though he managed to spend, I think, like a third of this serial kind of unconscious, he does a real David Tennant a la Christmas Invasion in that when he does show up and he is the Doctor, he is the Doctor, and it is such a quick, clear sense of who he is as the Doctor. The characterization is all there, and it's so distinctive.
It's so distinctive. It's really... He really, like, I think once he puts on the costume and turns up at unit, he really has turned up as the Doctor. And it makes me, from someone who is aware that this is years old and I've seen other things with Jon Pertwee in to do with Doctor Who, but it makes me so excited to go back and watch more of his serials and see how he interacts more with, like, Jo Grant and Sarah Jane.
We have to. I'm desperate to see a Jo Grant series.
I really want to watch... Well, anniversary year, I think... we need to, and I'd love to know what the audience think as well. I think we need to go back and we need to watch the 3 Doctors. I think we need to watch the 5 Doctors. I think we could potentially even watch the 2 Doctors.
Stop it.
So many.
Okay, I'm down.
Yeah.
Look, listen, Sam, I'm here all week.
Well,
when we're not recording, I just sit in my box and wait for the next one.
This is the highlight of my week.
I've got nothing left.
Can I take a moment of your time, Alasdair?
Go on.
Can we talk about the fact that the Nestene decided to create its physical form in the shape of a throbbing arsehole?
Oh, yeah. Apparently, the perfect shape to take over the Earth is a pulsing arsehole. Just pulsing and clenching.
It literally... I will say this. So, again, for anyone who's not seen the episode, when the Nestene is creating a physical form for itself, it's in this, like, little box, and it's growing itself a body. And at the end, you see all these big tentacles come out, and it's, like, trying to kill the Doctor. But while it's growing, they do... It's actually a very cool effect. You can kind of tell it's like 2 plastic bags that they're pumping air in and out of with, like, slime and goo in there to make it look like it's like a breathing... living thing, but they've like twisted it into this hole that then when they're pumping air in and out of it, it's just this hole that's throbbing in this box, and they're kind of next to it like, it is the perfect thing. But it is, that's what it is, and it really
sounds
does
so dark
look
web.
like a throbbing arsehole.
It sounds like something so illegal.
And yet it was on Doctor Who in the 70s.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know, maybe just no one wanted to call it out. But that description, that was colourful.
There you go. I mean, I hope if you've not seen the episode now, you can really clearly in your head see what the Nestene looked like.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, are you calling that a high or a low?
It's just a fact. Not a joke, just a fact.
Just a fact.
Just an observation. No, but one final little high that I did love in the episode is the teasers of different origin stories. I love that we get the little origin story of Bessie, that the Doctor stole that car and he really liked it. And he was like, I want to keep that car. And the Brigadier was like, no, it's got to be returned. And he was oh, well, you could find me one similar, couldn't you? And it's what then becomes Bessie. And I thought that was a really fun allude. I like that when they ask him what his name is, he's like, oh, you can call me Dr. John Smith. And I think he had been called it before. I was looking through, and in the Wheel in Space, Jamie McCrinnan had to give a name for the Doctor. And like off the top of his head, he called him Dr. John Smith. And so it had been used before, but I think this was the first time it properly was like used by the Doctor as an alias.
Yeah, I loved all that as well. I agree. There was a nice setup there.
Yeah, it felt like... this episode really caught audiences. It caught my eye. But it also felt like they were really building up something you wanted to watch. Like when the Doctor is saying that he'll stay and he's going to work with you and he's going to help defend the Earth from other aliens. I don't know about you, but it made me like want to watch next week's episode. And so I think as something that needs to like re-revive the show, this was like a perfect like kickoff for that.
Yeah, and I did watch the next episode after this, and it really, like, it maintains the bar, you know? It's good. I think the Earthbound stories really work well. Mm-hmm. There's a real... I don't know how to describe it. I wish I had more words, and I wish I was more, like, well-read in, like, TV from this era. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to, like, articulate it, but, like, the aesthetic that is sometimes achieved in 1970s television specifically is just terrifying sometimes, and there's that same kind of unsettled sense I think carries through. I know that people say Inferno really does that. That's another Third Doctor story where I think the Third Doctor essentially goes to a parallel version of the same place where Eunice
Right.
is evil and it is run by a sinister version of the Brigadier and Liz Shaw. And
Has he got an eye patch?
yes, very obviously
Yeah,
evil.
I've seen. Inferno I had awareness of, but I've just been looking up more stuff, and Liz Shaw in her Inferno world has this like weird Beatles haircut, like a weird like brown like bobby thing, and I just really want to watch this now, like evil Liz Shaw and Brigadier. Like this looks really, really cool.
And I think it kind of ends with everyone dying. I think essentially it's all doomed, because as much as he tries to warn them that all the things they're doing are going to end in their destruction, they ignore him. I think that's what the twist is. But there's, I don't know, I feel like it really works in the context of like 1970s telly. I don't know.
It would be really interesting to try and work out or pinpoint exactly what it is that makes these shows and movies feel so, like, I guess nostalgic is an odd word to use for someone obviously of our age, but like nostalgic for that era.
Yeah, it's the whole like, atmosphere around it. I wish I had like the right language for it. I don't think we're quite academic enough for it, which is a shame. You've reached the limits.
We can put it into
of
ChatGPT
Wholala.
later.
You need to like look elsewhere, I think, for a more academic reading of this, but hopefully it's some food for thought.
Exactly.
But
Food
I mean,
for
like,
thought.
listen, in summary, I adored it. Yeah, everything about Pertwee, the over-the-top humor, the facial expressions, the quips, the one-liners, the velvet jacket, the frilly shirts, the cape, the whole just theatricalness of the way he delivers everything, the flamboyance of it all. And there's just almost like a dryness, like the way he delivers everything, you know, like he doesn't smile very much, which I don't know. I love it all. I love it all.
Me too. So camp.
Sam,
Yes.
are you ready to play Camp or Down?
Let's go.
Woo, woo, woo. Okay, the wheelchair escape, Sam. All downhill, 70 miles an hour, face taped. Camp or Down?
I don't think I have seen anything more camp on my TV, and I've watched a lot of queer TV shows. It's 1000% camp. It's the most camp chase I think I've ever seen.
Ding, 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 ding,
Ding,
ding.
ding, ding.
That's subjectively correct. Well done.
Thank
Well
you.
done. The Nestene asshole, the squelching, convulsing, shaking, shivering, glucking, squelching,
Wet.
Nestene booty hole.
Steve.
Where booty? Is it camp or is it damp?
Oh, well, physically it's probably very damp, but I think it's come back
Physically
down
damp.
to being camp because both me and my boyfriend were watching it. All we could think when we were like, that really does just look like an arsehole. And it's come back round to camp, so it's got to be camp from me.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay, all right, it's your choice. There's
You
no
were going
right
to
or
say
wrong answers
damp,
here.
weren't you?
I don't know what I would have said. This is why I'm asking the questions. I really don't know what I would have said. All right, now I'm really going to put you on the spot, okay? And you're going to have to make some very difficult decisions, okay, about how things have aged. And you're really going to have to evaluate, like, especially considering how recent International Women's Day was. Liz Shaw's outfit, camp or damp?
Well, you really have put me on the spot there.
Come on, Sam.
Because I kind of love it. How I will give it a damp for the reason of
Oh, please.
all of the women in this are given just like the same kind of like short skirts and long sleeves, which is odd, and all the men are like completely fully clothed, whatever. However, I do love it, and I love it's like all beige, like brown neutrals, and it's got these weird like plasticky like rubbery bits on the top half.
It's a camp outfit. It's a really camp outfit. Look again, it's a camp outfit.
But it is a camp outfit. So.
We need more information. Was she instructed to wear that by the Brigadier? Because that's damp as hell.
What's the uniform at unit?
Exactly. If the unit uniform is like, Liz, you can't have it any lower than like this part of your thigh, that's screwed up and we don't support that. If Liz came to work that day and was like, I'm here for a job interview and this is the level I've chosen, you know, honestly,
That's camp.
you know, good for her. Camp. Last one, camp or damp. Now go and get me some grub, woman. I'm hungry. Camp or damp?
Damp.
It's damp. He's just a misogynist.
I don't know how extreme we're swearing on this, but there is a note that I made during the episode that I will quote, and maybe I'll bleep it in the edit. But all I wrote
Sure.
is, the farmer is a to his wife.
Wow!
Because he
That's
is.
not very. That's not very Wholala language.
Oh, I'll put a beep
This
in.
is,
It's fine. But that was my honest thought in the moment. I was like, no, that's damp. That's a.
Well, thanks for playing. Would you like some fun facts? I've gathered a few for you.
I'd love some fun facts.
So you might remember your Autons smashing their way out of the store windows, but due to budget considerations, the creators actually only showed the Autons about to smash the windows, and then they cut away with a crash because they couldn't afford it. So apparently this is the reason why when the Autons came back in 2005, episode 1 of series 1, go back and watch our review, this is why Ross T. Davies made such a big deal of them smashing the windows in rows. They could finally afford smashable glass.
That's so fun. That just shows how well directed the episode was, because I didn't even register that when watching it. I just put 2 and 2 together. I was like, they're about to smash it. I heard a smash. And now they're outside.
That's show business, baby.
But I think I had heard that quote from Russell before. It's a really sweet nod from him, and it made for some very good TV watching the brides smash their way out of the windows.
The whole shower scene where the third Doctor is washing and singing in the hospital, it happened because the house that the BBC had rented to shoot in had this amazing old-fashioned shower in it, and everyone basically decided it was too good not to use. So they were just like, we should throw that in. Yeah, chuck it in.
So that was the only reason they added it in? That's so it did make me want. Story-wise, it didn't really make sense. I do love a fun fact that I found. I'm not sure if this is on your list or not. Is obviously you can see the snake tattoo on Jon Pertwee's right forearm. You don't ever get an explanation for it on screen, but in real life, there is also no explanation for it because Jon Pertwee can't remember getting it. He said that he went out one night and got drunk and woke up with it the next morning.
What a king! What king behavior! I love that man.
Honestly.
Final fact from me: there was an actor called Ron Moody who was the first choice for the part of the third Doctor before Jon Pertwee got cast, but he actually turned it down because he said he didn't want to appear in a children's series. Can you imagine turning down Doctor Who, thinking like it's a bit junior for me?
That's so odd. And it's so funny because he was the actor that played Fagin in the Oliver movie, and I'm pretty sure that was the 60s, so that would have been before this, and that's a big family kids thing, and I think to this day would have been his most famous role.
No,
that's so odd. I can't imagine turning down the Doctor. No, but people did it when the show came back in 2005. I think they offered it. I mean, I might have to fact check this, but I think they offered it to Richard E. Grant, and he said no.
Really, but did return as the Great Intelligence.
Did return as the Great Intelligence, yeah.
Well, that's all I've got for you, Sam.
Oh, it was an amazing romp in the 70s. That was such a fun dive into classic Who, and it makes me very, very excited to go through and properly dive into some more stories.
It was a nice little travel back in time, that wasn't it?
It was. I'm really going to get the most out of my ITVX subscription.
Yeah, you use your week. If you see anything great on there, invite me over. I'll come around for tea.
I'll let you know.
Well, that's what we've got for this week. If you enjoyed this podcast, we would really appreciate if you could rate us and follow us on the apps, Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you're listening to us, because that really helps us find new Whovians and it just makes us feel nice.
It really does. Honestly, every time you leave a review, there's something especially about reviews. Me and Alice will always send it to each other, and it really it makes our day. It really helps with the podcast as well. So if you could leave a review or give us a follow on one of those platforms, that would be great. And as always, keep the conversation going. Let us know, what classic Who stories would you like us to see next? Have you seen Spearhead in Space? What did you think of it? You can let us know on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok, all of which are at Wholala Pod. You can also go back and rewatch old episodes of the podcast on our YouTube channel, also at Wholala Pod.
Until next time,
call me Smith, Dr. John Smith.
Bye.
Bye.